Praise the Lord. Thank you for joining through this Zoom meeting, especially to learn more about the life of Abraham. As for the past 1 week, we are briefly studying the life of Abraham, chapter by chapter, from the book of Genesis. Actually, today we are going to see from Genesis chapter 19 until Genesis chapter 24, God willingly. And for this, actually, I want to give the topic, the journey of faith of Abraham. From the beginning until the end, we can see how progressively his faith started to increase. So I will share the screen, then it will be useful for you. So this is the journey of faith, and moreover, we are going to see. We saw from, already we saw from chapter 12 until chapter 17. Until that, what all we learned from chapter 12 is that the first division, as you know that, is from the book of Genesis. It is from Genesis 1 to 11. And that is creation, the fall, the flood, and the nation, the four event. And this is the beginning of human race, and the time period is 2000 plus year. And I actually finished those portions. Then we went to second division, there from chapter 11, verse 10 to until the Genesis chapter 50, last chapter. The life history of four peoples are mentioned. First about Abraham, that's what we are learning from the past 1 week. That is from chapter 11 to 25. Let me go. Each and every topic, each and every chapter, I'm going to teach you have these topics. Number one, the main topic. Number two, the subheading, that is a flow of lesson. Then there is a theme, the core takeaway from this particular chapter, and the character study of who to spotlight in those chapters, and about the explanation of the incident, work of the Lord, actually what we can see the work of the Lord in each chapter, then the practical application for routines. So each chapter we are going to meditate in such a way based on these topics, based on this way of flow of teaching. And now, as you know that in Genesis chapter 11, what happened? Where it all began, God called people out of the broken system, because the people there, what happened? They did against what God has commanded Noah to do. They want to stay in one place and to make a city and also the tower until they reach the heaven. So they want to do and flourish, and which God didn't like because it is not according to God's plan. They were scattered. And there, what happened? The Tower of Babel was there, which represents human pride, was God plan. Then after that, in chapter 11, we have the genealogy of Sem, that is God's chosen line. From where we are learning the chosen line is that from there, the family of Terah come, because Abraham belonged to the family of Terah, and they were worshipping moon god. Okay, and this is what is a map where the children of Noah scattered all over the world. We can see the Ham, Sem, and Japheth. Here, this is the Canaan. And this is a place where what we are going to concentrate. And next, and this is the Canaan. There, what happened? From Ur, Abraham traveled because the Terah, along with Abraham, Sarah, and Lot, traveled from Ur and reached Haran. There, Terah died. After that, God talked to Abraham to move towards the land where he was showing. So Abraham, through Damascus, reached Succoth. And from there, he stayed in Shechem for some time. And then he went to Egypt, returned back because there was a great famine. And that is what we learned about the life of Abraham from chapter 12 to chapter 18. And this is a furthermore elaborate picture of this leaving Ur. And they went to Haran. They're called by God. And then what happened? Arrived in promised land, stayed in Shechem, and then went to Egypt, again came to Hebron and stayed there, and returned to the promised land. And there everything happened. Then, as we know that, so this is what is a further some more explanation. We can see it very easily. So the name, places where Abraham moved towards in the land of Canaan. And from this, we can see the life progression of Abraham until chapter 18. But that's what we learned previous class. So we can see the progression of Abraham. First is in chapter 12, there was a powerful mix of faith and self-preservation was there. Then in chapter 13, Abraham surrendered his rights and trust God. In Genesis chapter 14, Abraham becomes a warrior and a worshipper. And Genesis chapter 15, Abraham believed despite no evidence. And in Genesis 16, passively agreed to the plan that violates God's design for marriage and married Hagar. And in chapter 17, God gave the new name to Abraham, which means Abraham, the father of nation. And Abraham was renewed. In Genesis 18, the Abraham becomes a friend of God and he interceded for the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what we learned so far. And now, the next is Genesis chapter 19. That's what we are going to read, okay? Sorry, 1 minute. 1 minute, wait for 1 minute. Okay. And thank you. So we are going to see from Genesis chapter 19. That is the topic for that Genesis chapter 19 is righteous rescued from destruction. Please open the Bible. Keep it with you, Genesis chapter 19. And there, as you know, that the subheading is angel in Sodom. And then, as you know, what happened in Genesis chapter 18, God announced to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and the angels were sent to check what is happening there. During that time, Abraham prayed 50, 40, 30, 20, at least 10 righteous people there, don't destroy. God agreed. Then the angels went to Sodom. So the angel in Sodom. Then there you know that the cousin of Abraham staying there, that is Lot. Lot reluctant escape. It happened. That's the next topic. And then the destruction and Lot wife. There was a destruction of the land, and also Lot wife life was also finished. And the fourth topic is Lot's tragic end. The end of the Lot was very tragical. That's what we are going to see. It has 38 verses. So this chapter 19 is subheadings or the four things. Angels in Sodom, 1 to 11. Lot, reluctant escape, 12 to 22. Destruction and Lot's wife, 23 to 29. And Lot's tragic end. And now, let us go to the next one. Okay. So what's the theme of this chapter 19 is that God remember his intercessor. Who was intercessor? Abraham. And he will judge sin, but spares the righteous by mercy. Okay, he's a God who judging sin, but the righteous people are spared by mercy. And now, what's the character study we are going to see here about Lot? So, what's going to happen here? We'll see. In the evening, two angels arrived at Sodom, and I'll go to this. Okay. Keep this, okay. In the evening, the two angels arrived at Sodom, where Lot was sitting at the city gate. Lot welcomed them warmly and urged them to stay in his house. But he prepared a meal for them, and they spent the night there. Before they went to sleep, the men of Sodom surrounded Lot's house and demanded that the visitor be brought out to them. Lot went outside and pleaded with the crowd not to act wickedly, but the man of Sodom became violent and tried to break down the door. The angels pulled Lot back inside the house and struck the men outside with the blindness so that they could not find the doorway. They became blind. The angels warned Lot that Lot was about to they saw that how wicked they are, and there are not even 10 righteous people are there. So they have decided to destroy they destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because Abraham prayed at least 10 people. They were not there. But God wanted to rescue Lot. miraculously through mercy. So the angel warned Lot that God was about to destroy Sodom because of the great wickedness of the city. They told Lot to gather his family and live. Lot spoke to the men who were engaged to marry his daughters. They were not married, but the Lot has two daughters, and those daughters are engaged to be married to two men. And Lot spoke to them, but they thought he was joking and refused to listen. As at daybreak, it is going to daybreak, the angels urged Lot, his wife, and his two daughters to leave quickly. When they hesitated, the angels took them by the hand and led them outside the city because of the Lord's mercy. They were instructed to flee to the mountains and not look back. Two instructions. Lot requested permission to escape to the small town of Zoar, and the angels granted his request. The angels know the people in the Zoar are also bad, but the Lot requested. So angel allowed to go to Zoar instead of a mountain place. As soon as Lot reached Zoar, the Lot rained burnt sulfur from Sodom and Gomorrah, overthrowing those cities and the entire plain. And the entire plain was gone. Lot's wife looked back and became pillar of salt. Early in the morning, Abraham went to the place where he had stood before the Lord. He looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah and saw a dense smoke rising from the land. God remembered Abraham and rescued Lot from destruction. Lot later left Zoar and settled in the cave in the mountains with his two daughters because he was afraid to remain in Zoar because the people in Zoar are very bad, just like the people in Sodom and Gomorrah. Believing that there were no men left for them to marry, Lot's daughters made their father drunk on successive night, and each conceived a child by him. Such a bad attitude, such a terrible sin was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. The father and the daughter are lying and giving birth the children is happening in Sodom and Gomorrah. Such a very bad and worst sin, what God hated. These ladies, the daughter of Lot, did the same thing because there was no man. They want to give birth to, they want to go through the generations. So they made the father to drunk and slept with him, and both of the daughter got conceived by their father, Lot. But Lot didn't know anything what is happening. The older daughter gave birth to Moab, who became the father of Moabite. So when you read the Bible, there are people called Moabite who actually come and fight with the people of Israel. The younger daughter gave birth to Ben-Ammi, who became the father of the Ammonites. Thus, the descendant of Lot became nation of Moab and Ammon. So we can see in the map, we can see that in the map of Israel, the Moab and Ammon as a separate land, and they settled there because they are also the descendant of Lot. And that is what is happening in Genesis chapter 19. Okay. Then what is the character study we are going to see? The person we are going to concentrate more is Lot. Stayed by pitching tent towards Sodom. Okay. That is bad because that place is full of sin. But he preferably went there. He ended up living in it. So he first pitched the tent and started to go inside the city and started to live inside the city because he has a house inside the city. That's what Genesis chapter 19 says. Lot, his wife, his daughter, his testimony. He lost his wife. She became a pillar of salt, and Lot lost his testimony and his daughter's purity. They lost the daughter's purity because they conceived from the father itself. Served only his life was served because of Abraham's prayer, not for his anything, because of Abraham's prayer. So that's what happened to Lot. And let me go to the character study, the angels. What do you mean by the angels? Execute the rescue, even dragging the reluctant family by the hand. They were making late, but the angels rescued them by dragging them. So because God's grace is literally forceful. In our life also, God's grace is literally forceful, as the angel did to Lot and his family. And another character study is about Abraham, not mentioned in the chapter itself, but in verse 29, God remembered Abraham and brought Lot out. So Abraham's intercession saved his nephew even when Lot seemed unaware. Lot is unaware that Abraham prayed, But God rescued Lot because of Abraham's intercession. And what is the work of Lord in this chapter is judged sin completely. You can see here the Sodom and Gomorrah was completely destroyed. Not animals are also rescued. Entire plain was full of sulfur and burned down. Now the archaeologist people near the Dead Sea, they found out that certain place was full of sulfur, and everything was burnt. So the Bible is, what is happening in the Bible is correct, and it is truthful. And remembered Abraham and saved Lot. This is the work of the Lord. Okay, not Abraham didn't do anything, only he prayed. God only saved Lot, showed mercy even to the compromised believer. Lot was a compromised believer. He started to stay in Sodom and he started to live there. So he became a compromised man, even though he is compromised. God showed mercy. That's what the work of the Lord we see here. Then we see another one, that is the let me go to that. So the discussion question, the two questions I want to discuss with you. Number one, what's the danger of pitching tent towards Sodom? Pitching near this tent near Sodom means compromising with the world, living in the world of entertainment, going near and having contact with the people who are living a sinful life. So that is a danger, isn't it? So don't do it. Now next is, how can compromise sneak into our life gradually? It seems to be good at the first time, seems to be not bad, and slowly we compromise, and it is a very small sin, is a small thing, and it entirely engulfs us. That's what happened to Lot. He first pitched a tent, then slowly he went inside the city and started to live there. So it is very bad. So don't, the sin, it's when the sin from the beginning itself, remove it completely from your life. Don't allow this sin to put fall in your life slowly also, because it will engulf your entire spiritual life. So that is a discussion question about the memory word. In this main word is Luke chapter 17 verse 32. Remember Lot's wife. Who said it? Jesus said it when he described about what's going to happen in the last days during his second coming. So remember Lot's wife. It is a very warning thing. Jesus said to disciples, don't compromise with the world, live a holy life, because remember Lot life, what happened to her. She became pillar of salt when she look back what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. And next is that then we are going to Genesis chapter 20. So I finished 19, let me go to 20. So the topic for the Genesis 20 is repeated failure. There's also another failure in the life of Abraham that is going to be repeated. We'll see that what failure is going to repeat. Okay. So let us see here the repeated failure. First one, in this, the topic is a repeated failure. This chapter, I'm going to divide it into four subheadings. Number one, Gerar. It's a place, the same sin, the same danger. Abraham went to Gerar. There he is going to same lie, and he's going to face the same danger. And number two, God's warning in the dream, not to Abraham, but to a stranger, the king of Gerar. And then the king name is Abimelech. Then third one, Abimelech's integrity exposes Abraham's excuse. Then Abraham, even though Abimelech didn't know the true God, his character, he showed the integrity, thereby he exposes Abraham's excuse. And number four, Abraham, the prophet, prays for healing. Even though he compromised with the world, God used him to pray for the family of Abimelech, so that the woman in that family got conceived and gave birth. And let me go to the Genesis chapter 20, what is happening there. I want to explain the incident. Genesis 20, after leaving the area of Mamre, Abraham traveled to the region of Negev and lived between Kedah and Shur. He later stayed in Gerar. While in Gerar, Abraham said that Sarah was his sister. Because of this, Abimelech, the king of Gerar, took Sarah into his house. However, God came to Abimelech in a dream during the night and warned him that he was as good as a dead because Sarah was a married woman. Abimelech had not touched Sarah and pleaded his innocency before God. So God acknowledged that Abimelech had acted with integrity and explained that he himself had prevented Abimelech from sinning. Okay, God himself prevented. So God commanded Abimelech to return Sarah to Abraham, because Abraham was a prophet and would pray for him so that he might live. So God warned that if Sarah was not returned, death would come upon Abimelech and all who belonged to him. So that was a great warning from God, from the dream. So early in the morning, Abimelech gathered his servants and told them everything that has happened. He was so astonished and fearful. They became very afraid. Abimelech then called Abraham and asked why he had brought such a trouble upon him. Then Abraham explained that he feared there was no fear of God in Gerar, and that the people might kill him because of Sarah. I'm very afraid because there is a fear of God. He also explained that Sarah was his half sister, that they had agreed to say she was his sister wherever they traveled. Can you see here? That means before that itself there was a great agreement. Even God called him, even though he came out of the Haran, leaving everything to the land what God sowed. All these things is happening, but between Abraham and Sarah, there was an agreement, because Abraham thought, we are going to a strange land. We don't know how people are there. They may be there, no fear of God. They may kill me because you look beautiful. So there is agreement. Wherever we go, I have to tell you that you are my sister. You also agree to that. That was a secret agreement. That's what he's exposing. Abraham explained that he feared there was no fear of God in Gerar, that the people might kill him because of Sarah. He also explained that Sarah was his half-sister, that had agreed to say she was his sister wherever they traveled. Abimelech returned Sarah to Abraham and gave him sheep, cattle, servants, and silver as compensation. He also permitted Abraham to live anywhere in the land of Gerar. Abimelech gave 1,000 pieces of silver to Sarah as a public vindication before everyone. I said, now I'm giving the 1,000 silver, at least buy one cloth and cover your face, because Abimelech was very angry with Sarah for saying these excuses. So Abimelech, then Abraham prayed to God on behalf of Abimelech. God healed Abimelech, his wife, his female servant, so that they could have children again. That means once Abimelech took Sarah to his house, they became sick. There was no childbirth in his entire family, even to the servants. The Lord has previously closed the womb of the woman in Abimelech's household because of Sarah, the Abraham's wife. So this is what has happened in Genesis chapter 20. Okay, this is the incident. Let me go to the next topic. That is, what's the theme of this? The theme of the chapter 20 is that generational sin pattern are stubborn. Generationally, if you are doing some sin that is stubborn, but God's protection and restoration overrode them. Okay, so please come out of the generational sin pattern, even though it is tough. Now, God can even make his people a channel of healing amid their mess. Abraham is making a great mess. Instead of that, God, you can make his people a channel of blessing by Abraham prayer. Abimelech's family was healed. So, very careful about generational sin pattern. They are very stubborn. Please come out of it, because otherwise your testimony, you will lose your testimony. That's what happened to Abraham and Sarah in land of Gerar. What is the character study we are reading? Is Abraham, the repeated offender, is a character study. Lied about Sarah again 28 years later, 25 years later, again he is doing the same thing, lying about Sarah, that she's his sister, made excuse based on a partial truth. This is not complete truth, this is a partial truth. With that, he is making excuse. We also do the same thing. The complete truth is not there. Some problem is there. With partial truth, we make excuse. That's what Abraham is doing. Still called a prophet by God. God is a gracious God. He is ready to forgive and use us in his ministry by forgiving and making us to repent from our sin. And now, what is the work of the Lord in this chapter, verse 20? Protected Sarah and the promised seed. For example, if Abimelech slept with Sarah, what might have happened? She might have conceived and gave birth to the generation of Abimelech. Not the promised seed is going to come out. So the Sarah was protected, and the promised seed also protected, and spoke to the pagan king in a dream, and then restored Abimelech's testimony. These are all Abraham's testimony. Abraham's testimony was completely gone. In spite of that, God told, you ask Abraham to pray, he's a prophet, then your entire family is going to be healed. So thereby God restored the Abraham's testimony. So this is what God is doing to us also. We are flesh, we are made from the dust, we are doing excuses, lies, all things we are doing, but still God is graciously forgiving us and restoring our testimony. So this is what happened in the Genesis chapter 20, and this is the work of the Lord. And what is the team application is that old pattern of sin can return. Okay, be very careful. Old pattern sin is sleeping inside you. It return anytime. God's grace is bigger than our repeated failure. Even though you are under great failure of doing the old pattern of sin, don't be dejected. God's grace is bigger than our repeated failure. Number 3, sometimes God speaks through unbelievers to correct us. Most of the time it's happening to us. We think we are great, but doing mistakes repeatedly, and God used the unbelievers to correct us. So this is what happened, and this is a teen application for you from Genesis chapter 20. And let us go to the discussion question. 2 questions I want to discuss with you. 1, what's the recurring struggle you keep falling in? Please check. Please keep what are the mistakes you are doing recurrently? Not able to come out, doing it continuously, recurrently, secretly, without knowing of your parent. Check it out, bring it out. Holy Spirit will help you to come out of that. How does God faithfully encourage you despite repeated failure? You may be under the great failure, but God is completely faithful and encouraging you. And so be aware of this and come out of your repeated falling of sin. Then next is that the memory verse, Genesis chapter 20, verse 7 says, now return the man's wife, for Abraham is a prophet, and Abraham will pray for you. That's why God restored the testimony of Abraham, even though he repeated the same pattern of sin. So that's what we learned from Genesis chapter 20. Now let me go to the Genesis chapter 21. What we are going to read the promised fulfilled. The promise fulfilled in Genesis chapter 21. Before 25 years, God promised, and now he is going to fulfill that promise in the life of Abraham and Sarah. So let us see what's happening in Genesis chapter 21. The theme of this Genesis 21 is God's promise are always on time. Maybe we are thinking it is delayed. Abraham and Sarah waited 25 years. But God is telling God's promises are always on time, according to his time, not according to our desire. And what are the subheading for this chapter? The promise fulfilled is that number 1, Isaac is born. Isaac means laughter. That laughter boy, Isaac is born. 1 to 7. Hagar and Ismail sent away. You know that Hagar had a child from Abraham, and God told Hagar to give the name of the child Ismail. And after the giving birth, after Isaac was born, Hagar and Ismail were sent out. That is 8 to 21. And there was a covenant with Abimelech. You can see here, Abimelech was angry before. Now the Abimelech is coming to Abraham and making a covenant. With this, this chapter finishes. Okay, so let me teach you what is actually happening. I want to explain the incident. The Lord fulfilled his promise to Sarah, and she gave birth to son for Abraham in his old age at the time God has promised. Because in Genesis chapter 17, we saw that the 3 men, that is, the angel of the Lord came and told Abraham by the next year, Sarah is going to have a son, and name that son Isaac. Both Abraham didn't believe, and Sarah laughed. And the angels told, no, Sarah laughed, and Sarah denied. The word laugh came repeatedly in the chapter. So because the Isaac means laugh. So the Lord fulfilled his promise to Sarah, and she gave birth to a son for Abraham in his old age at the time God has promised. Same time, next year. The Abraham named the child Isaac. Okay. And then this meeting will end in 10 minutes. And you come back again, the same link, okay? Now, the Lord fulfilled his promise to Sarah, and she gave birth to a son for Abraham in his old age. At the time God has promised, Abraham named the child Isaac, which means laughter. When Isaac was 8 years old, Abraham circumcised him. You know that God has already promised and gave the Abrahamic covenant and told that to a descendant, I'm going to give this whole land. And through your descendant, the entire world is going to be blessed. And to the sign of that Abrahamic covenant is circumcision of the boy child when they are 8 years old. On the same day, Abraham obeyed. And Abraham, Ismail, and all the people, boy child who are staying in his house were all circumcised at the same day. And now this Isaac was 8 years old. As God commanded, Abraham circumcised Isaac as God has commanded. Abraham was 100-year-old when Isaac was born, Sarah rejoiced and said that God has brought her laughter and that everyone who heard the news would laugh with her. So this laugh is coming again and again because Isaac means laugh. Isaac grew and was weaned. Weaned means what? And the mother stopped giving the mother's milk, and Abraham held a great feast on that occasion. During the celebration, Sarah saw Ismail, the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, mocking Isaac. There was a mocking going on. This Ismail was mocking Isaac. Sarah told Abraham to send away Hagar and Ismail because Ismail would not share the inheritance with Isaac. She became very selfish. Before that, she only asked Abraham to take Hagar, and Abraham immediately accepted. That's a great bad thing. They want to help the God to fulfill the promise that backfired them. Now the Sarah is telling this Isaac is not going to share the inheritance with my son. This Ismail is not going to share the inheritance with my son Isaac. Abraham was distressed because he's a father, because Ismail was his son. But God told Abraham to listen Sarah because the covenant line would continue through Isaac, not through Ismail. So the God also promised to make Ismail into a great nation because he was Abraham's descendant. I'm not going to live. Ismail also, I'm going to live, but obey what Sarah is telling. Early the next morning, Abraham gave Hagar bread and water and sent her away with Ismail, only bread and water. They wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water was gone, Hagar placed Ismail under the bush and sat at a distance because she could not bear to watch him die. Okay, now don't think that Ismail was a small child. He's a teen boy. He's crying for the water. Now the water and food was finished and he is going to die, but mother cannot see the boy dying. He's a teen boy. And the teen boy's cry was tremendously heard throughout the plain. God heard the boy's cry, and the angel of the God called to Hagar from heaven, and the angel of the God talked to Hagar, and God encouraged her not to fear and promised again to make Ismael into a great nation. This again happened before when she was conceived, when she was afraid of Sarah and ran away from the house. God also appeared there near the well. So Hagar called that God, the God who sees, El Roi, the God who sees. And again, after 17 years, so the God again talking to Hagar, and God heard the boy's cry, and the angel of the Lord called to Hagar from the vision. God encouraged her not to fear, promised again to make Ismail into a great nation. God opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw a well of water. She gave water to Ismail, and they survived. I don't know why didn't she? Now God opened her eyes. She's saying there was a well with water. God was with Ismail as he grew up in the wilderness. Ismail became an archer and lived in the wilderness of Paran. Hagar obtained a wife from him from the land of Egypt. So Ismail married an Egyptian woman. At the time, Abimelech and Phicol, that is a commander of Abimelech's army, recognized that this was what happening in the Ismail life. Now again I come to the Abraham life. At the time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, recognized that God was with Abraham in everything he did because Abraham was flourishing. So they saw, oh, God is with Abraham. Who's saying? Abimelech, the king of Gerar. They asked Abraham to deal faithfully with them and make a covenant with him. Why? Because he's afraid that Abraham is increasing and he's become more powerful. He can come also and occupy the entire land. So Abimelech were afraid. So he came to Abraham and want to make a covenant and make a treaty. But they asked Abraham to deal faithfully with them and make a covenant with him. Abraham complained to Abimelech about a well of water the Abimelech servant had seized. And now when he's coming, Abraham is telling, you want me to make a covenant, but your servants are completely closed my well. They seized my well. They took my well. And Abimelech said that he had not known about the matter. Again, he's telling, I don't know. Abraham gave sheep and cattle to Abimelech, and the two men made a covenant now. Abraham set apart 7 ewe lambs as a witness that he has dug the well. What he's telling is, you are telling I didn't dug the well, isn't it? Now I'm going to give the 7 ewe lambs, and that is a witness for that I dug the well, which your servants have seized. Therefore, the place was called Beersheba. Both men made swear an oath there. So they're making oath, hereafter my servants never took your, will take your will, and your people should not come and attack us. You be faithful to us. So they make a covenant. And for that, Abraham gave 7 ewe lambs. That is, ewe lamb means female lamb, as a witness that he dug the well. Then, after making the covenant, Abimelech and Pichol returned to the land of Philistine. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree at Beersheba and called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God, the Almighty God. And Abraham continued to live for many years in the land of Philistine. So he is going to live many years in the land of Philistine. So he planted a tamarisk tree to make a distinction that he is living over there. And then he lived there, and from there he called on the name of the Lord. Okay, and he called that place Beersheba. So that means Abraham lived for many years in Beersheba. And in Genesis chapter 2, let me go what is happening here. A character study. What we learned is Sarah the joyful. First of all, once laughed in doubt, now laugh in joy. Became mother at 90, and Abraham was 100. Protective of God's promise. He was protected. So many times Abraham told that Sarah was his sister. Two times God protected Sarah and fulfilled his promise. So this is a character study. And what is the work of the Lord? Did the supernatural thing, isn't it? 90-year-old give birth. Number 2, cared for Hagar and Ismail. Isn't it? God never left Hagar and Ismail. God opened the eyes of Hagar and showed the well. And Ismail was also blessed. He married an Egyptian woman, and his family has 12 kings. And then established Abraham witness among the nation. How he established Abraham witness? Seeing how Abraham was increasing, the king himself was afraid, and he himself come to Abraham and made a covenant. Thereby, God established Abraham's witness among the nation. Then next is that the teen application. What the application point we are going to know that is God promises come true sometimes after decades. Decades means what? 1 decade is 100. Decades means after 25 years. So don't be discouraged. If God has promised something, he will certainly do it. And yours Isaac dream is worth waiting for. Here Isaac is a dream, metaphorically. Your desire, keep asking, keep waiting. Number 2. Number 3, God cares for those who feel rejected, because Abraham felt rejected, and Hagar and his son get rejected, but God cares for those who feel rejected, isn't it? Now next is discussion quoting. What promise from God are you waiting on? Please write down the paper. Don't be dejected. God is going to certainly fulfill in your life as God promised to fulfill in the life of Abraham and Sarah. Now, how can you trust God's timing when it is slow? So you can trust God's timing by remembering what happened in the life of Abraham, and keep on believing, and in his time he certainly fulfilled his promise. The memory verse is that Genesis chapter 21:1. The Lord did for Sarah what he has promised. So that's the excellent thing, isn't it? It's very good. So with this, I'm stopping, and this session will end. And with that, next session, I want to teach you about Genesis chapter 22. That is the ultimate test. Okay, that is what we are going to read in the next session. That is the ultimate test. And then slowly I'll finish until Genesis chapter 24. With that, I'll finish the life of Abraham. Today we will finish the life of Abraham. I'm here in Genesis chapter 21. The Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. So in your life also, whatever the promise God has given you,